appreciate that. It's good to be here this afternoon with all of you, or this morning for some of you might be coming in from the Central Time Zone. If you want to skip to the next slide, Aaron, we can hit the introduction real quick. My name is Tyler Moore. I'm the Director of Programs at the Commonwealth Center for Fathers and Families. And here with me today, and really the driving force behind the quality content of this program, is Aaron Ames, our Training and Resource Coordinator. And we'll be bouncing back and forth between the two of us. And again, today we're talking about fathers a protective factor, and then also especially about engaging dads in education and what the father's role in education, the impact dads have on kids learning, whether they realize it or not. We'll be using a research-backed data to talk to you about this, and then present you some strategies that have been effective for others in engaging dads. Our goal here is to show that substantial protective factor that fathers are, how it impacts the children, their families, and their communities. We are focused on kids, but we do it through a fatherhood lens, as you'll see, and real quickly you're going to see why. And before we get too far into this, if you wouldn't mind going down to that react button, and just if there's a thumbs up, if you give us a thumbs up if you've heard a presentation from CCFF on fatherhood and protective factors before. And if you haven't, not a problem. Just lets us know who's not going to be surprised. And Jen, I knew that you weren't going to, but it's good to have you there again. Let's see. And then next slide, Aaron, let's just keep moving here. Right. We are required to have a dad joke because this is a dad presentation. So let's see, the one I went with is one of my favorites, and that's because a lot of us come from rural communities, even if we don't live in one now. I was wondering, do you know how a man from a rural community, from a rural area, meets a girl that he likes? What does he do? What do you do? Well, you attract her. Okay, I'm getting exactly the facial expressions I was expecting. Barry, can you do better than that, please?
Please note, thank you for that dad joke, Tyler. We do like to just give an upfront, just a warning that as we talk about fatherhood, it really actually is a serious and a sensitive topic. So some of you guys have heard this before, but for those of you who haven't, we ask during this time, if this kind of brings up some feelings of discomfort or anything else, please take care of yourself. If you need to exit or anything else, we just want to let you know up front, we are going to talk about some experiences that involve that, and we all come from various backgrounds. And so please make sure that you are taking pause to take care of your mental well-being. So let's some of this as we really want to get through. We want to give you a backdrop and eventually get to education and how to engage fathers. But first question, why fathers? Why an organization centered on fatherhood? And the truth is that I think what we want to do is that we want to shift a narrative. The narrative for too long has been the status quo, is that fathers are absent, fathers are uninvolved. We have this phrase about the bumbling father, the bumbling dad doesn't know how to take care of his kids. And so what we're going to show is that fathers matter and have a unique role to play in the lives and outcomes of children, and families, and communities. And so we want to help shift that narrative and shift that story of just having the status quo and accepting that fathers can be absent or fathers can be uninvolved, whether that's especially when we talk about school, right? I mean, it's often just the case that we think that fathers don't need to be involved. That's mom's job. Well, actually, we'll get to some stuff later on that'll talk about that. And so we start with this guiding quote: "The imprint of a father remains forever on the life of a child." This is kind of the guiding quote in more than one way. We hope today that you realize that this is true, that in so many ways. And so some of you guys have heard us do this, but we want to establish fatherhood as an upstream preventative measure from some of the most notable public health issues in facing child well-being. And so this is what we hope to establish, and we'll show you today. Tyler will get into this here in a little bit. But it's also, in a lot of ways, this is going to be an upstream issue for for measures and protective factors and for academic achievement as well. And we'll see that. Um, some of our downstream issues, the public health issues that we're facing, you kind of look across the board: incarceration, substance abuse, mental health, physical health, academic achievement, homelessness, poverty. A lot of times we look at these, we see a trauma factor. We talk about adverse child experiences. These are things that are, of course, important to add to it. But interestingly enough, we hope to also demonstrate today in our brief time that father presence or father absence actually is intricately interwoven, even as an associated and sometimes as a primary cause of some of these issues. And so that's what we hope to show today. And just kind of summarize that: why fatherhood. As David Pompano, a researcher in fatherhood for years and decades, said that the collapse of children's well-being has reached breathtaking proportions. And you can think of all the different reasons, and he adds those: influence of television and mass media, the availability of addictive drugs and other access to things of that, the decay of social order. But he says the evidence is now strong. The absence of fathers from the lives of children is one of the most important causes. And so that's why we want to lift up fatherhood. It's so significant that for decades now, but also in 2018, really going back to the 1990s, this has been something that even at the governmental level, they have said, we've got to prioritize father engagement as a critical factor in strengthening families. And this has been reissued in 2018 by the Department for Health and Human Services. And then finally, why fathers? The statistic tells it all. 1 in 4 children. 1 in 4 children in the U.S. are living without a biological step or adoptive father figure of any kind in the home. And this will have a detrimental impact in many cases. So I know I kind of flying through a little bit of that, but I want to be able to give some time for us to really look at some of this stuff. So I'm gonna turn this back over to you, Tyler.
Great. And it's very interesting that even though you see that the disparity of father absence doesn't fall evenly across racial lines, and in fact, there's a lot of popular belief that especially African American fathers are absent in their families. The fact of the matter is, research shows that when you look at families where dads are present, that African American fathers are more engaged than their white or Hispanic counterparts, and significantly so, and are more likely to be involved in what they do, and even like taking them to and from activities and helping with everyday things like homework. So just in an effort to kind of make sure we have a balanced perspective of how we look at dads, across our communities. Next slide, please. And we did mention dads are a protective factor. I know several of you raised your hands and said you've seen this presentation before. We're going to move through this piece of it and get to some of the other parts of it. But so if we're going kind of quickly, we can make these slides available to you on the back end if you'd like. But when dads are absent from families, you see a lot of problems, including a high number of youth suicides are coming from father absent homes. And 85% of those kids in your schools who are showing this behavioral disorders come from father absent homes. In fact, they're 2 to 4 times more likely to need help with behavioral emotional problems in that situation. Next slide. But when dads are present, you see moderated levels of aggression and greater empathy in those kids. You see reduced psychological issues like depression, higher self-esteem, higher confidence. Next. Also, obesity, twice as common in father absent homes. Teen girls are 7 times more likely to get pregnant if they come from a father absent home. And in fact, you see hindered physical development and higher rates of psychosomatic illness in father absent families. Next slide. But when dad's around, they're playing with dad more. Dads like to play physically. You see increased motor development, physical activity, roughhouse play, which develops other qualities in kids that we're going to talk about in a minute. You see reduced and risk behaviors, delayed onset of physical activity in relationships with girls, more likely to have medical support, not only just access to, but encouraged use of access to medical facilities. And in fact, crazy statistic, one study found that only dads, not moms, but dads' parenting behaviors were associated with an increased risk of being overweight in obese children. And just wrapping up, that active ingredient of father's play promotes peer confidence, and they learn critical lessons in how to recognize emotions and emotionally charged events in the context of play with dads. They're picking up emotional cues. Um, when dad's not around, I mean, of course, now we're looking at just one income instead of two in a family. Poverty is a 4 times greater risk in those families. And the median income of that single mother household is 35K per year. And that's a national number, not a Kentucky number. Not surprisingly, when two income families are looked at, that income is more than double. And that we see the dads who don't reside with their children still serve a significant protective factor from economic disparities and poverty. Next slide. When dad's not around, 90% of homeless and runaway children come from father-absent homes. And the dangers that exposes them to are significant. We'll talk about some of those in a little bit. When dad, but when dad is present, we see engaged dads help reduce factors that lead to homelessness, such as low income, abuse, and involvement with the child welfare system. Next slide. We suspected this, but here's the statistics to back it up. When dad's not around, kids are far more likely to abuse chemical substances. And 75% of teen patients being treated for SUD come from father-absent homes. You're more or less likely to do that, 2 to 3 times less likely, I believe one of our researchers said, if dad's in the home. And that dad's communication with children has a unique impact on their alcohol abuse. I'm not saying that mom's messaging doesn't impact that, but dad's messaging about that has a significant and unique impact on children when they do that. And they're less likely to abuse drugs and alcohol into adulthood when dad's present in that home. Next. Almost 3 times more likely to carry weapons for offensive purposes or to deal drugs when dad's not home. When we talk about curbing of aggression and exaggerated masculinity, dads have that unique power to curb that in the home. And we see violent crime. It's a crazy statistic. When a dad disappears from a neighborhood, a 1% decrease in presence of a father in a neighborhood results in a 3% increase in violent crime. So the trade-off there is severe. And go ahead and hit that statistic. Like we said, boys need same-sex role models to help them decide how their masculinity is going to manifest. And they're more likely to exaggerate that in the absence of a father. Next slide. And it shows up here. Incarceration rates in long-term facilities of teens, 75% are coming from father-absent homes. 55% of adult inmates have children, and more than 5 million children, including 12% of Kentucky kids, have an incarcerated parent, which creates father absence. And the longer the duration of that, the more severe the impact of it. We'll talk about that, especially from an academic perspective when Aaron talks about it here. But almost twice as likely not spend time in jail if dad's around. The research is clear. The one thing that curbs aggression in young men more than anything else is the presence of their biological father. Next. Right, human trafficking, huge problem. The most lucrative criminal activity present in our world today. And men and women, boys and girls are victims of this. But some of our statistics are centered around young ladies, and 70% of the women who are trafficked grew up in a home without their father present. The rest grew up in an abusive home, almost can guarantee that the rest of them did that based on some of our other researchers that we talk with. And no surprise, male traffickers present themselves as a father figure / boyfriend and draw them into those relationships. When dad's present, that quality father-daughter relationship is a huge protective factor against girls getting involved in risky behaviors, and that would often lead them into being trafficked. And go ahead and hit that next slide. Dr. Jean Allard says it most clearly. The greatest insulation a girl has against being exploited is a healthy relationship with her father. Next. And
All right, so
I'm going to turn it over to Aaron, who has done a lot of research on this issue. And I was blown away by some of this. I would love to hear from you if you learn anything in such a day, because I sure did it. I'm a parent of two teachers, or I'm a child of two teaching parents.
Yeah, so thanks. Hopefully, from that we get an idea of kind of the roles that father play in various things. But I want to bring this up, and you guys probably, a lot of you probably do know this, that a father can play a significant role. But we want to just bring up some of those stats. I used an example the other day that my I've got three kids, and my youngest son, something happened at school the other day, and the teacher actually texted both my wife and I. We're both on file, texted both of us about it. I thought that's great. Because I think many times this is one of the stereotypes that we think, and sometimes it's very true. Father doesn't need to know about school. Father doesn't know what's going on. We don't need to reach out to the father. Though I imagine a number of you all who are serving those schools know the importance and the role that father can play. So we kind of start with this statistic that children with absent fathers are two times more likely to drop out of school, and that is also verified by the second statistic that 71% of all high school dropouts come from father absent homes. And we'll compare that to another statistic that we'll get to on the other side of father presence. So two times more likely to drop out of school, right? What we see in these statistics are duplicated in numerous studies, all different demographics and populations, in minorities and minority groups as well, which is just a lower GPA. When the father doesn't take any involvement, there's a higher rate of, we'll see, obviously a failure, a lower GPAs, lower academic scores. And in fact, as I think Tyler already mentioned this and alluded to, that the longer the father is gone from their lives, and brought up incarceration as being an issue for some, especially in Kentucky, the longer the absence, the poorer the academic outcome. So again, and this is to some extent, this is something that is very unique to fathers. Pause to give that moment to say we lift up mothers, and we'll think we are someone who advocates for two parents. And I know Tyler will get into this a little bit more when we talk about things, but nonetheless, the father has a unique impact on the academic outcome. Such that this, and I find this to be one of the most interesting statistics, which is that the most at-risk students, statistic-wise, the most at-risk students for failing school, not just for dropout, but essentially for failing overall, have two factors. One, no father figure at home. No, not adoptive. We saw that statistic up front. 1 in 4 children without a father figure at home. And so the most at-risk students for school failure are those without a father figure at home who also don't even know the identity of their biological father. And these are the highest rates of children with school and academic failure and dropout rates. We can talk about it even from early childhood. We'll see this with fathers. Fathers, even from infancy, the impact that a father has on the emotional and behavioral health. The rate is anywhere from 2 to 4 times the rate of needing help for behavioral issues as early as really as early as 2, going into the early grades as well. Of elementary school and all the way up through high school, the behavioral issues are there. And then one study actually demonstrated that upwards to 27% of 6th to 12th grade children that do not have fathers present will at some point be suspended or expelled. And that was, I think it was upwards, it was almost 3 times the rate of those with fathers present. We see father absence, as kind of already mentioned, early childhood development. You've got that there's infants who essentially don't have fathers present, and especially those that are reading to them. Tyler and I were just talking about this today about the need to just reading to our kids. But interestingly enough, the infants without fathers reading to them by the age of 2 will have essentially a lower score on vocabulary expression. Again, we need mothers reading to children as well, because we're going to lose that element. But this is a unique feature as well as the way that fathers read. And so disengage and remote interactions of fathers, again, early on is a predictor of behavioral issues. Now, let's talk about the other side. Let's look at this other side. So we saw 2 times the rate of dropouts. And in this case, if you compare that, we have children are 2 times as likely to enter college or to find stable work So 2 times as likely to enter college versus 2 times as likely to drop out of school, right? And these are the comparable statistics. Um, then 33% less likely to repeat a grade. Not only are they making better grades and having better GPAs, 43% more likely to get A's. And then we saw this from early on. Adult or parent fathers who are in their lives have this ability to reading to their children, helping them by playing with them to develop cognitively and emotionally and socially. And so we have this increased cognitive abilities, increased academic achievement overall. A quote from a former Secretary of Education says that if America's dads got as involved as America's moms in their children's education, America's children would be studying harder and getting a lot more A's. And so another thing, I don't know, as far as working in schools that some of you are in, you're gonna be dealing with students who also come from disadvantaged backgrounds, especially socioeconomically, that are coming from places that have other disadvantages. And we know that when poverty or something else is coupled with it, that there are other challenges in addition to behavioral, emotion, and academic challenges. But interestingly, several studies actually have indicated that when fathers are directly involved in helping their children with their schoolwork, even in disadvantaged socioeconomic conditions, this alone, the father will spend upwards to say weekly, or say upwards of 30 minutes a week, or around that time with their student working on that. It can actually overcome the negative association between socioeconomic conditions and academic achievement. So essentially, if a father will spend some time weekly with his child on academics, on homework or something, that this significantly reduces the rate of school failure and helps with academic achievement. Children whose fathers are sharing time with them, even in leisure activities, but also with meals. This is something that we know helps. And a lot of times conversations come up from this about school, and so this is something that will add to the academic success. But I think the biggest thing we put on this is that interventions for this interventions, as researchers show, need to focus on the father. It's not about how long he spends with the child necessarily. So let's say you've got a non-resident father who isn't living there. It is still significant if that father will spend a little bit of time asking, talking, and maybe even doing a little homework with that child, and this will help boost and increase the likelihood that the child will take the academics seriously and actually do better. Looking again on the other side at early childhood development, fathers, as mentioned, even going back to the slide on physical health, fathers who play not only with their adolescent children, but also play with infants, help them develop cognitively and socially. The unique way of reading to them helps them develop those language skills, as we kind of already mentioned. And so, again, it's important that fathers are actually engaged and understand their role. Does help shape children's academic and cognitive development, right? And this comes from an old 17th century English proverb and says simply this: the conclusion is, one father is more than 100 schoolmasters. Well, as we kind of, hopefully this gives us a little bit of guidance. Here's a slide if you guys want to see. We have some of this. I think we shared some of these PDFs. If you guys would like some of this, we can help you get some of this in the schools as well. We've got one specifically on education. These are some of our animated figures that we've been able to create with our marketing, or communications and marketing specialists here. But anyway, you look at all these statistics, and the overall theme that we're getting back to, and especially even in education, is that fathers very much matter, right? The role of father is important in addition to the role of mother. Two parents are better than one, right? And so, again, coming back to our opening quote, hopefully we've demonstrated in our short time that the imprint of a father remains forever on the life of the child, and that this is true in many ways, for better or for worse. And we hope that that is for better, and we want to help others do that and engage fathers to essentially improve that well-being of the child. We're going to transition a little bit now. We've got a really brief video. I want to hopefully, and Tyler and I really ideally, we want to have some time for questions. So if you're thinking you've got some things, please hold on to that. Some questions or comments. But we want to now kind of transition into, okay, you all are in school settings. What are some barriers, and then what are some ideas for engaging fathers? And to introduce that, we'd like to show this brief video.
Oh, there's Mom.
Oh, Mom's an astronaut training in NASA.
Where's Mom today?
Oh, Mom is serving time in San Quentin.
Where's her mom? Me, I can't wait till Monday comes so I can get away from my kids screaming.
Wow. I bet they probably psyched to get away from you, too.
All right, so leave it there for a quick second. This is a question we've got to ask ourselves. And again, not leaving this as we've been very dad, father, because let's face it, it's what we do and it's who we are. But we do not want to create the impression that we don't care about moms or that we don't think they matter. Fathers and mothers are complementary forces in a child's life, whether they live together, whether they co-parent, or whatever that arrangement is. The two of them together working for the child's benefit creates the absolute best outcome for children. There's no doubt in the research and about that. But if dads are such an impactive and protective factor in kids' lives, then we've got to ask ourselves, WTF, right? Why isn't this information coming out as much? And very more importantly, go ahead and roll it, Aaron, before they think I'm a horrible person. We need to be asking, where's the father? Next slide. And why isn't dad around? Why is it so hard to get dads to engage and to show up for things? And the first thing I would submit to you is I'm willing to bet that most dads aren't aware of the impact they had on their child's life. I guarantee them most of them don't know those statistics. And I need that to be true because until I took this job and started working in this organization 2 years ago, I knew I mattered, right? But I didn't know the impact that I was having on my kids. And I have to wonder, my youngest is 17, what would I have done differently or more of had I known this sooner? Anyways, that's my problem to deal with, my question to wrestle with. But as you get to engage these children very early on in their lives, and knowing that you want the best for them, how can we help get their dads more involved in their education, in their lives early on, so they can reap the benefits of that interaction? So first question is our culture a little mother-centric and mother-child centric? And does it kind of push dads out a little bit? Is there an expectation that mom should be handling some of these things and not even going to the father and asking? And go ahead, next slide, Aaron. And next slide after this. No, go back one. Sorry, I want that quote. A dad's leaving work and because his kid's sick, and his boss asks him, why can't your wife do that? It's like, because I'm a parent too, and I have responsibilities for my kids too. But how often do you see this conflict happening at work? Or it's like, hey, dad, mom needs to take care of that because you need to be at work. And it's like, is the boss creating that? Is the work creating that environment? And also, one of my favorite comedians, he does a skit about how stupid dads are and how stupid he is as a father. And he got a call from school and he fielded the call and they're asking the name of his child's pediatrician. And he goes on about how he would have been better off asking the lady in line in the bus next to his kid about that information rather than asking him, because he has no clue because his wife does all that. And the way he presented it was very funny, but it was also kind of crushing that he is willing to accept that and allow that to be the case for his kids and not be engaged. So to say that dads don't shoulder some of this responsibility is absolutely not true. But sometimes there's some other reasons too. Sometimes it's the way work's treat them. Sometimes, I have literally been called by my kid's school and asked to speak to my wife so they could ask a question about my kid. I'm like, you gotta be kidding. But sometimes that's how it is. Anyways, next slide. All right, so The next question is, are you inviting dads into a space that's friendly or welcoming to them? Or is a space that they're going to feel like an outsider in? And I know Aaron's going to talk about this a little bit more, but go ahead, next slide. No, he keeps giving my quotes, Aaron. I love those quotes. Especially when you're in a space that's populated mostly by women and kids, but we want to make dads feel included. Do we decorate it? Does it appear that? Is there imagery? Is the furniture say, hey, dads are welcome and expected here? Or is it like, hey, if you show up, here's one adult-sized chair in the corner for you to sit in and be quiet in while things happen? Anyways, next slide. And then finally, systemically, do we treat dads in a way that we kind of push them to the periphery? And do we adequately reach out and engage them, or are we really kind of focused on moms because they're the ones that we've found to be most reliable when we reach out to them, and we just, by habit now, don't engage fathers? Next slide. Right. So as I get ready to hand that off here, I've let that kind of floated that out there and put it to you. I'd love to hear from you. What kind of challenges are you seeing in engaging dads? Do you feel like any of this might hold any kind of water whatsoever? Have you seen some of that? What are your thoughts right now? Do you feel like your office spaces and your workspaces would be welcoming to a dad? Or go ahead, Jessica.
We tried to do a dad's event back in June, surrounded around Father's Day, and it wasn't aimed at dads. It was aimed at male role models, male caregivers. Like, we broadened it. At one of my schools, we advertised like we have Reds tickets to give away, Louisville bats because I'm here in Nelson County, Louisville tickets to give away for prizes and stuff. Like, we were aiming at what would be, I guess, considered typical outings for, a male figure and their kiddos. And we had one parent show up to one of them, and then we had two show up to the other one. And I serve a population of last year was almost 1,200 kids. I'm in 2 elementary schools. And we had a guest speaker come that, he's known. And it was we just got no responses. And I don't know. It's very hard to engage in. Like, our space is probably more kid friendly, I would say, than anything, just because we have elementary.
Yeah.
But the building itself promotes and has a lot of that warmth for any gender.
For all parents equally.
Yeah.
Cool.
And a lot of our programming, we do tailor it around like inclusion, in the sense of like even grandparent events, they're not grandparents, it's caregivers or grand friends, anybody that they feel is grand in their life. So it's never tailored towards one population per se, but it's a huge struggle to get anybody engaged, but especially male role models.
Yeah, I know. I'm not going to make excuses. I'm not going to tell you that you have an uncommon or unique experience there, honestly. And so let's just skip this. This is a 1-hour presentation. This is a summary slide for a 1-hour presentation, which we are not going to do today. But we know there's a lot of reasons that dads aren't involved in their kids' lives, or why they struggle to. And a lot of them they inflict on themselves. And some of them are more systemic. And I'm just going to let you kind of look at that list for a second. One, probably think something's missing, but then I was going to ask you also, and we're going to brainstorm a little bit about how maybe some of these issues can be overcome. Because this is a general slide, by the way, not targeted at Frisks. We do a lot of work with other organizations like DCBS and stuff where more of these issues they can engage head on. But my real question to you is, if you knew a dad who was struggling with any of the challenges on this list, it may not be your job to refer them, and you might not even be allowed to, but do you know some places or some services locally for you that you could send dads to get help with Um, I mean, maybe not necessarily addiction, but hey, I'm having trouble because I've got multiple mothers of multiple children of mine, and I'm just really struggling to make ends meet and keep things together. Or, hey, I know my kid goes to this school, his mom won't let me see him. I don't think there's a legal grounds for that, but I would like to be more involved in my kid's life. I know that's not your problem. Do you know where you can send a dad to start engaging in an issue like that? Or and Beth, if I'm overstepping my bounds here and this really isn't your wheelhouse, that's totally cool. It's just a question I had for this group.
No, I think that's fair to ask. Feel free to comment on that.
I said I won't twist arms, but
Are
some
we sharing ideas? Is that what you want us to do? Sorry, I was on a phone.
no, you can share ideas. You can just tell me, hey, that's not something I'm trained to do, or that's not something I take on.
Oh,
Or here's some common problems that I see, and I'm usually find myself talking to the dads I talk to, sending them to here, there, or here because this is the most common challenge.
well, I'll just share real quick something that I started. So I taught for 16 years, and this is my third year as Frisk. And what we do is donuts with dudes. And we have, I would say, about 75% participation. And out of 75% participation, I would say 50% is a dad. It's probably higher than that. I haven't looked at percentages, but what we do is we take per grade level and we give donuts and we find a community organization to support to come out and help. We invite our dudes, and we invite our local college football team. So they're out greeting. If they don't have a dude, the college kids will fill in. And we do this at breakfast time from 7:30 to 8:15. It's super quick. It's per grade level. And so we have an activity. They eat breakfast. The kids leave. I talk to them 5 minutes and go over some statistics like you all did today. And it's amazing. Our moms are jealous. So now we're going to start mornings with moms on Mondays in 2 weeks. But it's a great way for our fathers to get involved. And what we do is we have a flyer, but we send out like a sign up sheet that says, yes, I'd like to attend. And they have to pick who's coming, like whether it's a dude, a neighbor, a friend, or I need a dude. So it helps them kind of remember, hey, I've got this event. And it's amazing. Like, we love it. I don't know how, if our scores have increased, or I don't know any data behind it, but I know that I have dads at school, and that means a lot.
I
That
have a
is
question,
huge.
Brandy.
Yes.
Is this specifically for your boys, or is it like any kids could come to like
So
girls can
so
come and
what
donuts?
so I was over two schools. I was over 1,300 kids. We split this year. So Miss Charmaine's on here. And so we went from doing it. Well, I didn't do it at the intermediate level. I do it at the primary. So I did it kindergarten, first, and second grade. And what we do is we do all of kindergarten. We have 8 kindergarten classes, 8 first, 9 second grade classes. Every child, every class comes to breakfast. They get off the bus, they come directly to the cafeteria. Their dudes come in the school, they meet up, and it's just in our cafeteria. So it's one grade level at a time. And so like October we did second grade, no, or September, and then October and November. It was once a month. Our mornings with moms is going to be different, and it's going to be every Monday in March and April. The Monday. Yeah. So it's going to be 5th through preschool. We're going to do every grade level for our moms because they were jealous. But we also have a health initiative and have a grant. And so we got a little bit of money.
Yeah.
But Donuts with Dudes, I'm telling you. And I started it because I actually listened to someone at VOV. It was the father's Texas guy. I can't think of his name. And I sit on that session, and it was amazing. And I had a wonderful daddy, praise God, that read to me, that was involved. And I loved it. And I was like, we've got to do father involvement. And everybody loves it. They love it. Our community supports it. I buy from our local donut shop. They're homemade donuts. And it costs about $400. And what we do is the kids get their breakfast and they get donuts that day, and they get whatever their normal breakfast is. And then so it's offered because we have to offer that for, our funding for our food department. And then we get the good donuts. So
Well,
nice.
Brandon, you had me at donuts. You want me to show up for an event, you got me hooked for sure.
Yeah. And then we buy water, and sometimes we have coffee, or we have a coffee shop sponsor. We have had that before. Or sometimes if our cooks have time, they provide the coffee. We'll buy cuties. Kids love cuties. I buy cuties for almost every event I have. We offer more. If we don't have bananas, we'll throw them on the table. And it's awesome because those CU football boys, they help me put the tables out. They help me put the materials out, and then they clean up. And then they take
love
some
that you
donuts.
involve the community in that and bring the football team.
Yes.
What did you say your timeline was? Did you say an hour? Do you do it at?
No, it is 7:30 is when so from the time school starts, we start at 7:30. That's when buses begin unloading. We say the pledge, and that starts at 8:00. After the pledge, teachers, get your kids out. I'm going to talk with my dudes 5 to 10 minutes. Might do some trivia, might get some prizes. I'm going to state the facts. And I'm going to say, Daddy, you're doing wonderful. We love you. You're here. You're supporting. Keep doing the good work.
Love it.
That's good. See, actually, part of it, Tyler, is us getting some of y'all together so you can share some ideas, because we're going to share some ideas, but the truth is, you guys have some ideas. And Tyler, I would probably say,
Shut up and
for the
get
purposes
together.
of what we're going to do, to go ahead and jump a little bit forward to. Here's the one thing that we might say on that Randy even shared about talking about facts about the way fathers serve, and getting some of those facts in education. It is something that sometimes you need to do. But aside from that, we want to go to a way in which possibly, if you guys have some ideas, that we can partner with you. So, Tyler, you want to jump ahead to that? Is that?
Yep, that sounds great to me.
Okay.
Cool. So this is the Frisk event that Mayfield puts on. 713 people showed up. They have this amazing place. We got 5 fishing ponds all next to each other. So you park in one place and you just go, and they provided poles and tackle and bait and everything. It was a huge event and awesome. And then we're working with her to try and figure out how to engage dads beyond this, but we'll get to that in a minute. Next slide. So actually go back to real quick. When it comes to getting dads to show up, sometimes incentives help. And sometimes it's hard. And food and childcare at an event, to take away 2 major barriers for an evening, is huge. But if you combine that, with a movie and child participation or something like that, love it. We found that vouchers, gift cards, even just tangible stuff that they need, like diapers or food or those kind of things, making those available to participants helps. Next slide. Some non-monetary things like on-site programming, helping them get there, feeding them when they get there, childcare. That kind of thing can also be supportive. Or if there's some other services that they're going to need, like you can get a medical checkup or something like that, there can be powerful attractants. Anyways, next slide. Here's a tip sheet that we have on including and engaging dads, just in case there's something there you hadn't thought of. Next slide. And I know that Beth, I think we sent that to you to push out to folks. Real quick again, who we are. We're Commonwealth Center for Fathers and Families. Our goal is to help dads to provide child and family safety, economic stability, and overall community well-being by helping educate for them, advocate for them, and collaborate with organizations to give them better support, because we know how that impacts their family. This is our team. This is who we are. If you are in Northern Kentucky and you have some folks you think would be great team members for us, we'd love to hear about them. because we are looking for a regional engagement agent up in Northern Kentucky. We know there's a few people live up there, and we'd love to help take better care of them. Next. We do have 5 major engagement pillars. I'm going to focus on number 3 today. And so we skip down to that. We have a mini grant program. And here's some of the pictures of some of the events that organizations, agencies have partnered with. We have had at least one Frisk partner with us every single time. Mary Lou is, by the way, I forgot to call you out. It's lovely to see you here today as well. But all we're asking for is we offer 2 grant levels, $5,000 or below and the $10,000. For $5,000, have an event. Or one of the Frisks said, that's not enough. I want to do 4 events throughout the year for fathers and children. I'm like, you can definitely do that for $5,000. She did it for $2,500. You don't have to spend the whole thing. Just give me a budget. Tell me what you're up to. Show me how it's helping dads and engaging them, or helping them engage with their kids. Boom, we're there. At the $10,000 level, we would like to see not just the event, but some kind of battery of services or curriculum delivered. And this may not be in your wheelhouse, but it might. This might be something you could do. But we see most of our Frisks have been participating at that $5,000 level. Like I said, if you have an idea and it's going to help your dads and the families in your community, we'd love to see it. Next. We talked about Mayfield Independent Schools, Frisk, and what they did with their guys' night out. And then the Callaway County Laker Frisk had an all-pro dad event that they sponsored throughout the year, and had a Super Dad Games event at the end of all that. And that was like Kid Olympics. It was a blast. Next. Harlan County Frisk is actually working with dads who are incarcerated right now, so that when they re-enter, that they can start re-entering in a way that they can start being responsible parenting and starting to engage with their kids and their families. Next. Like I said, we talked about some of our mini grant programs. Another one was a Dunks with Dads that they did in Henderson. It's an all-day camp, but the dads have to be there with their kids, and they all do basketball, and they have a D1 hoop player come out and support that. So just like you bring your ballers out, this is ways to help get them involved in their community too. Next. Here it is all in one place. And by the way, the application is extremely straightforward. It's 3 pages, not counting the budget, and we do not want to itemize slice of bread by slice of bread kind of budget sheet. But like I said, it's designed for people who've never written for a grant before to be successful and effective at it. And we keep trying to make it easy to color in between the lines and tell us what we need to know so that we can work with you. But as I said, 2 tiers that Steve described there, and some of the criteria there to either establish or expand a program that services dads or connect dads with essential community resources, increase programming capacity for dads, or inform advocacy work that will address responsible fatherhood. There's actually several other factors too. And like we said, if it's something that you're doing to help your dads get more engaged with their kids in your schools, I'd love to hear about it. We'd love to support it if we can. Next. Okay. This is the question portion, and this is where I'm going to open it up to talk even more. But if you'd advance us one more slide, please, Aaron. If you would do me a favor, pull out your phone, shoot that QR code. I know that Beth's going to make you fill out a survey too, but we would love to know if we were able to be useful for you today. So if you just shoot that QR code and let us know a couple quick questions. It would help us be more supportive for Frisks and other organizations across the state. So thank you for that. But working with dads, drawing dads out, getting them to engage. Some of the things that we kind of bounced over, one of the biggest things is, have any of you had any success getting a dad or a male figure to represent the program you're trying to invite the dads to participate in? Has that worked? Have you tried it? It didn't work, but have any of you had that experience?
Did you say just representing the program as a whole?
Yeah, getting a dad to invite other dads to the program to say, hey, we're doing donuts with dads. I'm a dad. I'm going to be there. Would love to see you there too. We can all make time for it. Let's go.
No, that's a great idea. But like, I had the KSP come, and I encourage, or like other entities. And so, like, one time it was KSP and they came, and one time it was another organization, Atmos Energy, and another time it was another organization in town. I
And
did
I guess
that.
I'm saying, like, could you get a father figure? And I keep saying dad, but a father figure, father, biological stepfather, the male person who's filling that role in that family or that the child looks to as that father figure. Can you get one of them from the class to step in and say, hey, Donuts with Dads is going down next month. Would love to see you there, you know? And then, oh yeah, that's a dad from the class for my kids. That's someone like me. That's someone who I connect with. They're doing this. And so and all that kind of subliminally goes through the head when they do that. Does that make sense? And we found that one of the strategies that's been really helpful is even if you can't recruit dads onto your staff and organize and execute these programs, if you can get father volunteers, father figure volunteers to kind of champion that event, it can have a stronger result, if that makes sense.
Tyler, I
Another,
just wanted to share something from the chat from earlier. Um, Kelly Terry made a comment that said, we have the Watchdog Dad program at our elementary school, and we've had 5 dads volunteer in our school this school year. We have a dads and kids pizza night to kick off the program for the year, and most dads just come to eat free pizza with their kids, and that is totally fine too.
which I love, but they showed up. They said, look, and because here's one of the reasons dads don't show up, they're working. And you can do something at 6 or 7 o'clock, and some dads will still be working. And it's just like, look, I'd love to be there, but you know, I'm doing 6:10s this week, and the boss needs me there. You know, I can't just walk away just so I can have a donut or some pizza with my child. But if you can find times and spaces where dads are more likely to be able to participate because they're not going to be conflicting with work or some other time challenge, that can be helpful. And then, like I said, you back that up with, and by the way, there's food, and by the way, there's childcare, or it's a movie night at school with kids for this grade or for this set of grades, and we're providing pizza. And so you're the childcare, but you don't have to cook, and you're there, and your kid wants to see this movie, and you guys can watch together and then talk and laugh about it later. Just creating spaces like that for that to happen, and I'm not saying you don't, please don't read that message, but just creative ways to do that. And I know it's hard, but that the timing and then removing some of those other like food and childcare barriers can be effective. But getting a dad to tell them this is something that's good for them to be doing is huge. Because as soon as
Tyler,
you like,
sorry.
go ahead.
Just going back to what you were saying earlier about providing resources for father figures that might need them. It might be a good idea just to provide those, like on a table or something at some of these events, because they might not, want to make that jump and reach out and say they have a need for resources or things. So just having that readily available for them to pick up casually and take out if they need it might be a good idea to get those out there too.
Exactly. It's a way to kill a lot of birds with one stone. You and turn that event with the kids also into kind of some resource access for things that are needed in the community. But it makes it easy to just grab a business card, grab a flyer, for a friend, not for me, and do that.
Hey, Tyler, I think, sorry.
Oh, you go ahead.
I think a barrier that I found in some of mine, like when we did this event back in June, the one parent that showed up at one of our schools would be the parent that I would want to show up. But as far as like admin, if I was trying to use him as, for lack of better terms, the poster child, poster parent, whatever, that would not be someone that they would want coming into the buildings. But that's the population of the parents that I want seeing coming into the buildings.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big barrier that I have found with trying to get some of these programs set up, because like I don't remember who said it, with like their I think it was you, Brandy, about your dudes with dads and somebody else. We had all pro dads at one of the schools right before I started as the Frisk, and then COVID kind of stopped it. But it was the dads that, not that they don't need the resources and they don't need to be a part of their kids' lives, but it wasn't the dads that needed the resources at the same time. Like, it's dads that are part of the sports in the area, the dads that, do work for the fire, EMS. A lot of the dads that won't reach out and really want to be a part because they're ashamed or what have you. That's the barriers I'm finding, is trying to get those dads to be involved or want to be involved, or do want to be involved, but they're too, that stigma around it that people won't let them. That's my barriers.
No, I hear you. And so like in my head, events like a movie night. Lights are kind of down. You're not really looking at everybody else. You're looking at, and Karen, I'm seeing you say no, no, no. All right. Yes to no, or no to yes. No. But events where it's like it can be a come as you are, and there's not a lot of judgment, but it's like you said, there's a lot of social pressure on that too. And I see, hey, David, do you have any thoughts as we're wrapping up? I'd like to introduce our Chief Visionary Officer, David Cozart. It's his fault we're here because he made our organization and created this opportunity for us. David, I know you've been doing this for about 30 years, looking for ways. Are there any thoughts or advice that you want to share with this group?
Yeah, thank you, Tyler. Thank you to each one of you. I have a great regard for folks that work in our educational system, teachers and Frisk coordinators. My wife has been both at one point or another and is a principal now. I do not envy you all in the great responsibility that you have. And as a Frisk coordinator, I know that you provide resources. And so do you have resources in your center that are directed at fathers? I know that you have things for the kids, but if you have opportunity to have things that would be attractive to fathers, right, in your center, do you have the ability for them to get diapers for their other children? Do you have ability for them to come and get those resources in the community that were mentioned? That will draw them. The other thing is, the reality is, like the sister that just spoke, you deal with blended families, right? You may have a mother that has a couple of children in your school and a couple of fathers of babies. So we know you're dealing with many dynamics. And so the encouragement that I would give you in trying to find things that work is that do not look down on the small beginnings. So someone said, we have events that are for everybody, and sometimes we can't get folk to come. What do you do in that case? You have it again, right? The fact is that this is a paradigm shift, not only for many of our institutions, including education, and which includes you as a family resource center coordinator, but it's a shift for fathers as well. When you have a dad event, don't be ashamed to call it a father's event. That is not to subjugate mothers. Again, mothers and fathers are not contradictory, they're complementary, and that's the message we want to send. But you can unashamedly say, this is for fathers, because we know now the importance of fathers. And when you get one father, what happens? He could impact other children. When I go in my nephews and great nephews' school to redirect them, I'm simultaneously redirecting several folks, right? And so my advice to you is, don't look down on the small beginnings. Remain encouraged. There are pre-existing curricula if there's discomfort with talking with dads. That the All Pro Dads, again, has been mentioned. The Watchdogs has been mentioned. We have resources we can get to you as well. But it's something, just like everything else, you have to do consistently. And it has to become an environment which fathers actually believe, like, hey, they've done this every month. They've done this annually at the beginning of the year where dads walk kids to school. They've done this. They come out in the community every June during Father's Day. They're serious about this. And you'll see the momentum take off. The small things. My dad told me, always make the small things count. So I started teaching mathematics to miniature horses. Had to save the dad joke game here. Hey, thank you all so very, very much. Keep engaging fathers. Even though it feels like, hey, these guys ought to do this anyway, if you're not doing it for the fathers, rehearse those statistics that Tyler and Aaron so adequately presented to you. It's actually a father's program for children. And I know all you are invested in the lives of children, and as are we. So thank you for all the good work you do. Thank you, Tyler. Thank you, Aaron.
All right. Well, I just wanted to remind everyone that we do have a survey link, and I put that in the chat along with the approval code. I want to thank Tyler and Aaron and you as well, David, for coming in and joining us and sharing this information. I would also like to let everyone know and remember that there is in the invite, there are flyers with a lot of this information in it, especially with the mini grants. So if you want to go back and look at that invite that you received for the Wednesday webinar, you can check those out there as well. And we can attach those whenever we upload this to the training hub too. So keep an eye out and share about how wonderful this was with your fellow coordinators so everyone can come and check this out. I'll go ahead and stop recording.